Hello, and welcome to the Georgia National Guard Fencepost podcast. I'm your host, Charles Emmons. So it is the month of September, and that means a lot of great things. It's the start of fall, and also September 15th is the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. To tell us more about Hispanic Heritage Month, we have three great guests, all Georgia National Guard leaders, who have some amazing stories to tell. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
My name is Senior Master Sgt. Viviana Grisales. I am part of the 116th Medical Group Detachment 1, which is a domestic operations mission under the Homeland Response Force. I am also dual status full-time as the senior enlisted for the Georgia Counter-Drug Program. I've been in the military a total of 21 years. My first 6 was regular Air Force, and the remainder I was part of the Oklahoma Guard, Connecticut Guard, and Georgia Guard.
Hello, I'm First Lieutenant Talisa Soto. I am part of the 40th Brigade Headquarters Company. I am the Provost Marshal on M-Day status, and currently I am on orders as a 201st Safety Officer. I've been in for 6 years, and I'm also on the civilian side. I'm a police officer in Gwinnett County.
I'm First Lieutenant Morales. I work at G4 on the M-Day side. I'm a technician with Joint Force Headquarters. And I've been in the Guard now for almost 6 years, coming 6 years, yeah.
So, what would you all say Hispanic Heritage Month means to you?
I think celebrating one of the largest ethnic groups is important, not only for that, but for diversity. And diversity is a military necessity. Also for global engagement. I think it highlights a lot of individuals, a lot of ethnic backgrounds that I've seen, and it's always very good to see how diverse populations can put and can implement and can give part of what they know, knowing where they're from, to help support the team. I think it's a team effort, and I think everyone brings a different element to the table. I think that's part of diversity, having that voice at that table, which is what the military is.
For Hispanic Heritage, I think we celebrate it as a whole every single day by eating different types of food, being able to celebrate traditions and culture, and following family traditions as well. We're able to recognize history and the achievements we've also had.
Please talk about some of your experiences growing up and what it was like to move to America and the state of Georgia.
Yeah, so I was very young. Both parents, I'm from Colombia. My mom remarried this guy he was a consulate to Colombia for different countries. So we got to travel to New York and then Georgia. Long story short, they got a divorce. So we wound up getting our green cards and being able to stay here. So that's kind of how I wound up being here in Georgia.
So, any memories from being a kid in Colombia?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I'm very grateful for in general is some of the freedoms that we have here that we don't. And I think it almost takes somebody living outside of the United States to really appreciate those things. Like I mentioned before, you can own property and it's yours. You're not going to be bullied out, which has happened. And the FARC, which is the Freedom Revolutionary Army. So basically, they deal with drugs and cartels and stuff like that, kind of like your Pablo Escobar stuff. So when I was little, they came over to our cattle farm, my grandparents, and they basically took everything. They took all the eggs, some of the cattle, some of the horses, and my grandma just kind of hid us in the closet. I snuck out because I didn't know what was going on. I saw a guy with face paint and a machine gun. I thought he was really cool. Well, he was the bad guy. Later on, I found out what was going on. But it's just little stories like that.
Speaking of stories, tell us about the ice cream man.
But when I was little, essentially, the ice cream man was this dude on a dirt bike, and he would just come and, ice cream guy. So for the longest time, I was like, why does he always come at this time? Like, something suspicious was off about the ice cream man because it's it's a bike with a cooler in the back. And Later, I found out when I was an adult with my granddad that he was an informant for the FARC, and they were having to pay him to keep a certain amount of protection for the farm. So, those rights that we have in this country to own property, to be able to arm ourselves and defend ourselves, we don't have that in South America, and specifically in Colombia. So, you know, we should be grateful for those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't appreciate them until you don't have them, and you see how crazy it can get without those rights.
Senior Master Sergeant Grisales, how about you? What was it like growing up for you?
I'm actually originally from Medellin, Colombia. We came here in the mid 90s with my mother, and I have two older siblings. And we moved away primarily because of the violence that was going on in Colombia at the time. So it was a perfect opportunity for us to live in a different place. So we're all originally from Colombia. My grandparents, my great grandparents, we're all originally from one specific region, and we came here, for the American dream. And we grew up in an environment that was it was growing. It was growing in Gwinnett County primarily. A lot of Colombians moved from different cities, from New York City, from Florida. Um, Mainly because Georgia became that melting pot for a lot of cultures. It wasn't like that in the 80s and 90s, from what I've heard. Now it's full of every culture that I know. So yeah, we grew up in specifically Lawrenceville, Gwinnett County.
And did you have challenges initially acclimating to the culture of Georgia?
Absolutely. I think when you come from a culture where you just know your own, you just live with your own language and your own religion and your own customs, and you come into a place that doesn't know any of that. They know just on the surface, specifically the city where we were from. They just thought about one thing. I think the language challenge was a big thing for a lot of us. I was young. I was 11 years old, so it was easy for me to learn. Um, the customs, and just the access to simple things like public transportation, which was very easy for us. We would walk everywhere. I'm from a major city. Um, Going to school and learning about other people from other places. And yeah, I think the culture shock was the biggest challenge, but I think we were very resilient, and we've adopted a lot of the American customs and kept a lot of our own. And I think it's a mixture of both, and I think that's what makes us so important here.
So, have you seen more of an acceptance and an embracing of Hispanic culture in recent years?
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things about the Hispanic culture. I think we're very our ideas come up with everything, whether it's clothing stores, a lot of restaurants from all the countries. And yeah, I think a lot of the culture kind of just settled here, and it's expanded. And not only that, I think our music also expanded to a lot of our the southern states where it wasn't heard as much. Florida is different. Florida's kind of like its own separate melting pot, but I think Georgia is has grown tremendously in what, 27 years.
Lieutenant Soto, how about you? What's your background?
But my mom's from Colombia, and she moved to New York when she was 19 years old. And my dad was born in Puerto Rico, and he moved to New York as well when I think 11 years old. I was born and raised in Yonkers, New York, and then I moved to Gainesville, Georgia when I was 11. The reason why we moved, there weren't a lot of career opportunities in New York. We moved to Georgia, but it was also kind of a culture shock. I was raised with my dad's family, kind of the Puerto Rican traditions. Then I moved to Georgia, and my mom's family's from here, and kind of also experienced the Colombian tradition as well. As well in Gainesville, Georgia is kind of a culture shock, just because the environment, the students, different types of cultures as well. And it took me a while to adjust.
So, what was it about the Georgia National Guard that interested you in this organization?
Um, the Georgia National Guard. I think the National Guard overall. We're here for our community. We're here to support the homeland and the state of Georgia. I think it's very cool to see people from similar backgrounds, and you always kind of link up with some of them. In the medical community, not so much, but I work a lot with the Army when it comes to the Homeland Response Force, and I think uh, being diverse and just kind of adding to the team effort. But yeah, just the community effort, I think, is one of my favorite things about the Guard. It's just helping out our neighbors. And even if it's Florida or other states surrounding it, I think we're here for that.
Lieutenant Morales, you started out in the Marine Corps Reserves and you came over to the Georgia Guard. Talk about how that transpired.
Yeah, so I finished my contractual agreement with Marine Corps 6 years. After that, I took like a 6 month break trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But then I decided that I wanted to go into a guard. The majority of my friends in college were actually in the Army. So seeing what they were able to do, because they were able to go to Airborne, Aerosol, do all these cool schools, and it seemed like they were being activated and utilized a lot more. I wasn't really deployed in the Marine Corps, so I did a few missions in Africa, but it wasn't anything like the Guard has been. I think if you're more motivated in the Guard, you can do more.
And then what kind of experiences, opportunities, things like that did you have since you joined the Georgia Guard specifically?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've got to do a lot actually. So, became a parachute rigger. Went to airborne school. In fact, actually, that was my first time in the Army was airborne school. So I felt like I was like a fake because I wasn't used to wearing this uniform. Um, and then graduated from there. Then went to rigger school, Fort Lee, and then air assault. So I did all the schools pretty much one after another. Yeah.
And that was all being because you were part of the 165th Quartermasters, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. So talk about your experiences with that unit, because really it's a unique unit in the Georgia Guard.
Yeah. So we do aerial delivery. I mean, a lot of people know 165th. I mean, I love the unit. There's a lot of things to do. I was the aerial delivery platoon leader, so we did bundles, but just anything having to do with the air. Jumping out of Chinook or a Black Hawk, C-130. I mean, you can't beat it in my opinion. It's pretty fun.
So talking about opportunities, what is your view of opportunities for young Hispanic Americans joining the military?
I think a lot more Hispanic younger kids are interested in serving. I think we bring that diversity and that change, that resiliency, so we know what it is to change and to move and to change environments. I think that's an important piece of adding to the team effort. And I think my advice to them would be to think, sky's the limit. If I've made it this far, being an immigrant, not knowing the language and learning it, going to school and taking advantage of all the opportunities the military has to give you. There's so much that the military can give you if you take advantage of it. I think I think one of the things about the Hispanic culture, not that other cultures don't have it, is our family concept. It's very important to us, whether it's uncles, aunts, distant cousins. We are extremely tight, and I think we also add that because we're protectors. We're here to play as a team and take care of each other.
Lieutenant Soto, you had mentioned something to me earlier about how you had seen some resistance in terms of Hispanic families wanting their children to join the military. What would you have to say to them in terms of your opportunities and what you've been able to do in the Guard?
I've had multiple experiences and friends in high school, mostly Hispanic families that, since they're very, very close, they fear that their child's going to move and leave them. Also, another fear that parents have is being deployed, again, with just moving away from home. They don't want their kid to, not that they don't want them to succeed in life, but they just don't want them to move far away. And I've told, or anyone who's in this position, I've told them, National Guard has a lot of opportunities. They'll pay for school. TRICARE is a great plan. Family care. I went to Georgia Military College. I did the early commissioning program, which is you commission within 2 years. I went to Georgia Military College, commissioned in 2018. Then I went to University of North Georgia and graduated with my bachelor's degree. And I I came out debt free.
I mean, just to add on to my previous topic, I think joining the military is kind of one of those things that can give you so many tools to succeed. And even after the military, I've taken advantage of college benefits. So the Air Force has the Community College of the Air Force. I've taken advantage of 2 associate's degrees with them. And during my active time, I was able to accrue the post 9/11 GI Bill, and that helped me pay for my bachelor's in business. I've taken various certifications on a medical side, and I'm actually currently working on a project management certification, which the military also pays for. They pay for the course and they pay for the test. And just any opportunities that I can take advantage to improve and learn. That's one of the things that I would tell young kids as well, is you will always be a learner or continuous learners, even when you're a professional. I think the TRICARE benefits are enormous. You don't pay as much. Well, unless you go to the dentist, then you pay a little bit better fee if you're high ranking like me. That's the only downfall of that. But medical benefits and discounts. There's just so much out there for the military, and the support that we have from the community is huge. Um, but I've taken advantage of any opportunity that I can get if the military offers it. You know.
Have any of you had any experiences in the Guard, any exercises or deployments where your background has been an advantage for you?
I think the coolest annual training trip that I had when I first joined the Oklahoma Guard. I transitioned from active duty to the Oklahoma Guard when I had my daughter, and our first AT in the Oklahoma Guard was actually Puerto Rico. We did annual training for 2 weeks at the San Juan Medical Center. And just to give you some perspective on the demographics of that unit, I was the only Hispanic, Spanish speaking. So I went ADVON, so advanced party, and I scoped out the whole place. We worked out of the medical center. We stayed at this Army fort, Fort Buchanan in Bayamon. And I basically did all the logistics as an E4. I was the only one that I could speak the language. And a lot of people from the States have this misconception that every Puerto Rican speaks English on the island. That's absolutely not true. And we spent 2 weeks in Puerto Rico, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. It was my first time on the island, and I think I go every year after that. Um, but just the opportunities the military has been able to provide for me to, add with my background. I've interpreted for people, for patients, um, and it's always fun to tell people your story. And they ask you where you're from. When you get mad, you have an accent. I'm like, I do. It just comes out naturally. But yeah, it's very much in the forefront for me. But obviously, America has provided a lot of opportunities for me as well.
As you've grown up and met other cultures, what have you learned about Hispanic heritage and the culture in general?
I learned a little bit of history on Hispanic heritage a few years ago, and I remember that it used to just be a week, uh, from what I learned, and now it's a whole month. So they kind of appreciate that. But I think um, just understanding what the heritage means, and for example, like Latin America is just an enormous ethnic group, but we're so individually different. We don't eat the same things in Colombia that we eat in Puerto Rico, or the accent or customs. Christmas celebrations are different. They're a lot more lively in Puerto Rico. They play instruments. It's fun. Um, but I think just knowing and understanding that as a whole, as a community, like we learn the American customs, I think it's important. That's what the importance of the heritage is, so they learn about us as well.
On behalf of the Georgia National Guard, thank you to our guests and those of you tuning in. Be sure to catch our podcast the first Friday of every month on all your favorite podcast platforms.